Hello, and welcome to Good Grief, the podcast dedicated to demystifying and destigmatizing grief with compassion and humor. I'm Nikki. I'm an end-of-life doula and a grief coach in Columbus, Ohio. And welcome to Season 6. Where on earth does the time go, you guys? I'm still shocked I've been doing this podcast for as long as I have. I legitimately was not sure if I would go for this long, and here I am. So happy to be here. I'm happy to be back for Season 6. I had a nice little break. I didn't get a break. I never get a break for this show, and that's okay because I love doing it. While I was on break, I was hard at work working on brainstorming topic ideas, interviewing guests. Guys, I've got guests lined up for I don't know how long. Some stuff is kind of, I don't want to say exploded, but some, lovely things have happened, and I've had a lot of opportunities to find new guests, but here we are. So, and as I mentioned in the trailer, I'm trying really hard to kind of get back to where I started with this podcast. I've been reinventing a lot of things this year. This has been a year of a lot of more self-discovery for myself and a little bit of reinvention with my work as a death doula, myself as a person, and this podcast. And when you start a business, I won't get too into the weeds with this, I promise, but it's easy to keep trying different things and like broadening everything out and just throwing spaghetti on every single wall to see what's going to stick. And you get to a point you're like, I've got too much going on. And I'm at that point now where I'm trying to rein things in, right? But with that, I have to remember why I started all this in the first place. Things got real chaotic at the beginning of the year, and I lost sight of why I was doing everything I'm doing in the first place. So I've just been spending a lot of time kind of reinventing things. And the podcast was one of those things that really spoke to me. I had no desire to quit, but I was getting very stressed out with things. And I've gotten some interesting feedback from some listeners or people who've listened to a single episode here or there and gave me some interesting feedback on the show. And I decided I want to bring things back right to grief, right? That's why I started this podcast. I wanted people to feel less alone in their grief. When I went through things with my brother, there were certain things that I thought about, certain things that happened, and I was like, nobody has ever felt this. I must be going crazy, right? Well, if you've listened to the show long enough, you know that's not right. And I've learned all that, and I want other people to understand that too. I want people to feel less alone. So I'm trying to just focus solely on grief. I will still reference things about my work as a death doula. Obviously, death can cause grief, right? But as we know, there are all sorts of different types of grief. So yes, I will still talk about things with death and dying, but I want to focus specifically on the grief aspect of things. Okay? Cool. Now that we're on the same page with this. If you really enjoy this podcast and you would like to support me further, please go over to patreon.com/Nikki the Death Doula. You can get access to this podcast a week early. You get grief affirmations sent to your inbox once a week and some great other bonus content throughout the month. And I send a specific video once a month just to my patrons to fill them in on what I'm using their funds for, because all the money I receive through Patreon I specifically put towards providing pro bono work within the community, whether that's speaking engagements, working with clients pro bono. I have one person I work with on occasion. I have been working with off and on for a couple of years now, and I'm working with her at no cost to her thanks to all of my lovely patrons. So please keep that in mind. Also, if you're a caregiver, I'm really trying to beef up my caregiver space. I created a great virtual space for caregivers that can just be available 24/7, but we also have support groups twice a month. So check that out. If you go to the front page of my website, nikkithedeathdoula.com, scroll down a little bit, you see a little banner that says live peer support groups, and click here for more information on Caregivers United. So that's where you can find all that. But that's not why you're here. You're here for Good Grief with Nikki the Death Doula. So let's get into it. So what are we talking about today? Oh, we're diving deep into a topic that I have referenced, talked about a little, but we're going to just focus the whole episode today on grief and pop culture. Ooh, this is so exciting. So what about grief and pop culture? So, and I say things a lot of times about how Hollywood does us such a disservice. Pop culture does us such a disservice, right? But pop culture, media, all these things have been quietly shaping how most of us think about grief and what it should look like. Even if that doesn't do it overtly, but in the back of our minds, we're always remembering that TV show we watched, that movie we saw, right? When we're faced with things around grief. So we're going to talk about TV shows, movies, books, all of these things that are considered media that have taught us how to grieve, what we should do, what we shouldn't do, and how it should look. Okay? So grab some popcorn and let's go to the movies, shall we? That was cheesy. I'm not apologizing, though. So occasionally, though, they do get it right, and we'll talk about that as well. So let's talk about Hollywood and movies, and not just Hollywood, but TV shows too. They write the script on grief, right? So let's just picture any movie you've seen about somebody dying, okay? I was very young at the time, but I still remember Love Story. My older listeners might. That was a big one back in the late 70s, I believe. Was that the 60s? I think it was the late 60s, early 70s. Forgive me, I don't have it in front of me. Very, very popular movie. Spoiler alert. I'm sorry, this movie's really old. I shouldn't have to put a spoiler alert, but the main character dies at the end. I'm hoping you know this by now. But anyway, you see these portrayals like this movie where you have, and it's been a long time since I've seen it. I'm probably not getting it right. So I'm just painting a broad brush here on a lot of these types of movies where you have the protagonist or the person who is dying, and they stare out this window that, by the way, is very tastefully decorated, and everything in the room is just as perfect as it possibly can be. There's no messes. There's no used adult diapers in a bag in the corner. That doesn't exist. And they stare lovingly out the window, where they look at their loved one and they say some beautiful final words, and they sigh and close their eyes, and then, they're gone. Okay? Roll credits. Cue the character montage of their whole life leading up to that moment. That's not always how it's going to go, guys. Now, I'm not going to say death is never like that. It can go that way, and I'm sure it has on occasion, but on the whole, it's not typically how it goes. Sometimes there's a bag of used adult diapers in the corner. Sometimes there is, stains on the bed. Sometimes there is other icky things. But bodily functions aside, for those of you who can't see the video, I'm going to make a face right now, so just picture it in your mind. This is how Hollywood likes to portray a person who's just deceased. Okay? So I've got my eyes softly closed, my mouth is closed, and I look almost like I'm half smiling. Think the Mona Lisa, right? No. When your body dies, your muscle function goes away. The blood leaves parts of your body, so your jaw will hang open. Your eyes will not be closed. I guarantee you. They might be half closed. They might be a little low-lidded, but you will look more like this. Okay, for those of you who aren't watching the video, you should, because I'm sure the face I just made was hilarious. But mouth's hanging open. Eyes are not quite shut, right? And good luck closing them, because sometimes they'll bounce right back open again, okay? And I apologize if this is graphic or if I'm taking this too lighthearted. I'm just trying to be real, and sometimes I get a little candid, which was a complaint I got on this podcast, by the way, and I apologize. So again, I'm sorry. I'm obviously not trying I'm obviously not trying to offend. I'm not saying these things to be flippant about them, and I'm not saying them to be funny. This is just how it is. And we just have this picture in our mind of everything looking so differently because of things we've seen in movies. So, we talk about those big Hollywood deaths like that, right? Let's talk about TV shows. TV shows don't always get this right either. I feel like this was an episode of Three's Company, because that was one of my favorite shows growing up. But there's always these tropes about the 7 stages of grief, right? I see this crap all the time, and I hate it because it's been so miscommunicated over the years and so misconstrued over the years. But there's this trope of the 7 stages of grief, right? And There was one, I feel like it was Three's Company. Somebody was talking to another person, and somebody was in the background, and they were talking about the 7 stages of grief, and they were like acting it out on their faces, like, depression, and the person in the background was like, oh, miming, sobbing, and then anger, and they were like, "Nrr," and it's funny, sure. But first of all, like, a lot of that has been dispelled. Even Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who wrote on Death and Dying about the stages of grief, said these aren't steps, right? Regardless of all that, it becomes funny. And I'm not saying that's bad. It's okay to laugh at these things sometimes. It's okay to have fun with this, right? But when you keep seeing, especially things like this, the stages of grief, right? You keep seeing that over and over again, that it's ingrained in your head that that's what it is, and that's just black and white. This is what grief is, right? It's okay, again, to have fun with that. And sometimes, like, all this aside, movies, TV shows, whatever, sometimes it's nice to see something that's wrapped up neatly in 30 minutes or 90 minutes or 2 hours or whatever the movie length is. It's a catharsis, and we need that because we don't always get that in our life. So that's okay. But as long as we understand that that's not all that's out there, that's not the only option, right? That there are other manners of grieving, of death, of dying, right? They just create this idea that grief is one big moment, one sad thing, and then it's over. They don't often show the boring parts, okay? I'm not just talking about the mouth hanging open and how we actually might look when we die, or what grief actually looks like, but let's talk about the boring crap. Everybody running around trying to find out where's the title to mom's car because we need to get that to probate, or what do we do with all this leftover medical equipment? And did we file this form? What about that form? Like, there's all the boring crap that we never talk about, right? The mountains of paperwork. And then God, we have to go through all of mom's stuff now. And oops, we found dad's porn collection, to be blunt, right? That might happen. And again, I laugh, I'm not trying to be flippant, but we don't talk about those type of things. So all that to say, grief is not this one moment and then it's over. And it's not a step process, right? Grief is big, it's confusing, it's complex, and it's messy, and it's icky, and it's not going to wrap up in 90 minutes or a half an hour, or there's not going to be credits and then you go on with your life. Grief it's permanent. It's there with you forever, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? So it's awkward, strange, slow. Anyway, let's move on a little bit. One other poopy part. I hate using words bad and good. One other not amazing thing. Okay, one other bad part of all this is, let's talk about the harmful tropes that media portrays, right? It's full of stereotypes. Media, pop culture is full of stereotypes, especially when it comes to how we are supposed to grieve based on things like our gender, our culture, our role within the household or society. Household? Did I say household? Household. Society. Like men and specifically are really given the shaft when it comes to grief, right? Especially, and you see this all the time. This drives me crazy when I see men in movies or TV shows that refuse to cry because they have to be the strong ones. Guys, men, if you're listening to this podcast, you're allowed to cry. You're allowed to grieve. You're allowed to be angry. And that's the other one. It's like men can get angry with grief, but women can't. Oh, women are not allowed to be angry. We have to be sad and somber and quietly depressed. But God forbid we wail and scream. Oh, whoa, what would the neighbors think? You're showing too much emotion. Crying is something you do in secret. Oh my God, guys, seriously, I can't get past this. It drives me insane. There's also the trope of the grieving mom becomes this vengeance machine and she's out for blood. And again, for entertainment's sake, this is all fine. I can absolutely watch stuff that has bad tropes when I know this is just entertainment for me. That's fine. As long as we understand that this isn't the reality, right? And we just remember that there are different ways to grieve. So, but the one thing, like, I almost never see, there are a couple examples I would give. One thing I almost never see, let's talk about non-death grief. How often do you see people go through some type of grieving regarding infertility, regarding some ambiguous losses, chronic illness, estrangement, divorce? We don't necessarily see the grief that comes along with that. So when anybody starts to face these griefs that are considered a disenfranchised grief, oh my God, do we feel crazy? Like, I went through that myself. I've talked about that multiple times on this show of like, what is wrong with me? Why am I so upset? Why am I so sad and not realizing I'm grieving? Brain explode emoji here. Like, they don't talk about that at all. I've seen a couple things. Again, I'm going to reference one here on some things that got it right in just a moment. But if you know of something, shoot it my way. I want to see it because I want to spread that around. But we don't talk about the non-death griefs, right? Pet loss. Pet loss is a big one. Oh, I take that back because there's a lot of movies out there. Oh, Marley and Me. I'm never getting over that one. Old Yeller. Whew, that was required reading to me. Hello, childhood trauma. Yeah, we do focus a bit on the pet grief, but we don't always get that right either, right? And sometimes you get the whole, it was just a dog, and then they all move on. But anyway, so you all know where I'm going with this. You know the point behind this, right? That we need to understand that grief isn't always there's no guidebook. There's no, this is how it's done, right? And this is when you're done grieving. But what about when they get it right? Let's talk about that because that makes me so happy. And I have a few examples. I did a full episode where I talked about the show. It was on Netflix. Who knows if it's still on Netflix? You know how they roll. They take stuff on and put stuff on, take it off all the time. So it was called Afterlife. It was written, directed, and starring Ricky Gervais. And I thought that portrayed grief beautifully because it was messy. It was real messy. And this poor guy went through hell after he lost his wife. It was so well written. And of course it's Ricky Gervais, so it's got the dark humor aspect to it, which I love me some dark humor. And if that's not your jam, this may not be for you, but beautifully well done, right? Like if you want to go listen to that episode, it was way back at the beginning. You have to scroll a long way back, but I did that episode. What's the Dead to Me? There's a great show on Netflix with Christina Applegate. I think it was the last thing she filmed before her MS got too bad. She was diagnosed. It was starting to have effects during the filming of that. Fun fact, but that was a fantastic show. I went into it thinking it was something completely different. And once I really started watching it and the way that these women coped with their griefs, I'm not going to I'm trying not to put spoilers, but there's definitely a non-death grief in there that is just gut-wrenching and beautiful. And that one's a good ride. There was a movie that oh my gosh, Daniel Levy? I'm so sorry. Eugene Levy's son made a movie called Good Grief. He stole the title from me, obviously. Great movie on grief. Beautiful. And that one was messy too. Again, I'm trying not to portray spoilers, but the things that he discovers after his loved one dies is very complex. It makes his grief very complicated. So definitely a good one on complicated grief. I just watched the limited series. It was a remake of a movie from the 80s, early 80s, I believe, Alan Alda. It's called The Four Seasons. It's about a group of friends that they get together a couple times a year to go on vacations together. They just revamped a short limited series. It's like 8 episodes. I was real sick one day and I watched the whole thing. This is like 4 hours of TV. That one shocked me on the last bit. Again, try not to spoil, but man, did they nailed grief on that and how messy and complicated that can be. And then honorable mention, gold star mention to Pixar for Coco. Coco talked about death and dying, got it right. Inside Out, that was the one I was referencing about non-death grief. This poor teenager who was forced. Her parents moved her across the country and she lost all her friends because she had to move away. Whoo, that one hit hard. Encanto, quietly teaching kids about intergenerational grief. Gold star, Pixar, for getting all these right, man. And those are for kids, right? I love that. Let's teach our kids young how icky and complicated grief can be, but also how beautiful it is, right? So all those places that get it right, what is so good about it? Well, they're not trying to wrap it up in a nice little bow. They're not making sure that by the end of the movie, you're like, well, that's over. I mean, it's not leaving you feeling sad. You do get a catharsis, but they let this stuff breathe. They show us characters who are definitely different now, but they're not fixed. They're not better, right? At the end of the episode, they're different. So why, and if you're watching this video, you can see I've been very animated this whole time. Why am I so passionate about this? Why is this so important? Why does this even matter? Nikki, why are you talking about this at all? Most people aren't learning about grief from support groups or therapists. We're just going by what we've seen, right? And what we've seen might be media, it might be what our parents have done. It might be the grief we saw from our family or friends or people around us. We're learning it from movies and books. And when our grief doesn't match that, when it's messier, when it goes on longer, when it's quieter, we feel like I'm messing this up. I'm doing it wrong. You can't do it wrong. Your grief isn't cinematic. Your grief isn't going to wrap up with some violin music and credits. And you don't need to have this redemption arc that we all see. You need space. You need time. But most of all, guys, you need permission. You need permission to feel gross. You need permission to feel angry, sad, confused, alone, whatever it is you're feeling. So here it is. I, Nikki the Death Doula of Columbus, Ohio, in the year 2025, I am giving you permission. Here is my blank permission slip. Put your name on it. You have permission to feel your feelings. You have permission to grieve how you want to grieve. Okay? Provided you're not hurting other people. If you want to scream, scream. If you want to be angry, be angry. If you want to cry, cry. If you want to be joyful, if you want to feel relief, you're allowed. You have my permission, okay? The only thing you do not have my permission for is to hurt other people because you are sad. Got it? Look at me. Pinky swear, okay? Don't make other people feel your feelings with you. You feel your feelings. They are valid and they are real. Don't force other people to feel them too, okay? That's all I ask of you. All right. So thank you so much. I hope that was somewhat helpful. I hope it was good. I know I got really animated, really excited. I know I laughed and giggled a lot. And if I offended anybody with that, I'm sorry. That's just my sense of humor. So that's my take on grief in pop culture. And since we're at the end of the episode, you know what it is. It's time for the Death Deck. Woo! And it's right here in my hand. So, I had it upside down. Death Deck. All right. So, if you're new to my show, I dropped one. I pull a card at random from the Death Deck. I read it and answer it. And I welcome you to answer it as well. And it's just something to think about throughout the week. So, should I read the one I dropped? It's on the floor. I don't feel like picking it up. So, I'm going to pull this one. Okay. Ooh, this is fun. Choose a reincarnation challenge for your next self. Would you rather come back A, super rich but die well before my prime? B, super poor but live a long and healthy life? Or C, paralyzed but be guaranteed a Nobel Peace Prize? I don't like the options on that. That's a little odd, but okay. That's okay. No shade to the writers of these because they're lovely women. So let's see. I mean, I would say B. As long as I had a long and healthy life. I mean, don't get me wrong, being super rich could be kind of fun, but never been there. Yeah, I feel like as long as I'm healthy and happy, that's what's important. I'm just saying all these things as a question. Yeah, money isn't obviously super important to me, so the whole like being rich or poor thing just doesn't really enter into it as much, I guess. I don't need one or the other. Like I just would love to be healthy, happy, and have a meaningful and fulfilling life. That's maybe seems like a cop-out answer. I don't know. All right. Well, thank you so much for tuning in this week and for putting up with me and my animatedness and my excitement and everything. I'd be interested to hear your answer to the Death Tech question. So you can reach out to me through my website. It's nikkithedeathdoula.com. You can also find me on Substack. You can find me at patreon.com/nikkithedeathdoula, where you can get early access to the podcast. And also, if you go to nikkithedeathdoula.com, you can get one of these cool shirts like what's hanging up behind me. I got merch for sale there. I've got some Good Grief shirts. I've got a journal, some other great things there. So please check that out. And you can find me there. Substack, like I said, patreon.com/nikkithedeathdoula. If you really enjoyed this episode, please give me a 5-star rating and write me a little review. More people find me that way. I would love for more people to hear the show and feel less alone in their grief. And that is all. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. But remember, as always, your grief is yours, feelings are valid, and grief doesn't always have to suck. Good Grief with Nikki the Death Doula is produced by Nikki Smith of Nikki the Death Doula LLC in Columbus, Ohio. Nikki the Death Doula LLC is for consulting, education, emotional support, and guidance, and is no way considered a funeral establishment or licensed mental health establishment. Scripts, editing, sound design, literally everything with this podcast is done solely by Nikki Smith of Nikki the Death Doula LLC, with the exception of the music. The music is Cheery Monday by Kevin MacLeod. Licensing information can be found at filmmusic.io.